no need to amend soil at all, period, anywhere. Time out. That is an observable fact of the whole entire history of planting. Now, you go ahead and you start planting something in your place. Let's go, where are you from? Kentucky. So you're kind of near natural pecan range, but not necessarily in the heart of it. Let's say you go over here and grab a whole bunch of pecans in this nursery, and this nursery, and this nursery, bring them to your place and plant them. Some will struggle. And now you say, oh, gee, how do I help these trees that are struggling? And then you start doing this input game, and it's a never-ending road. Whereas the answer was that those weren't individually adapted to your site, your soils, and your conditions. So if you go through the whole selection process, where you buy way too many trees, plant them way close together, and then treat them with sheer total utter neglect, the ones that die are dead. You don't have to worry about those anymore. And the ones that are alive are thriving with no care whatsoever. So that stun is like one polar extreme, and it is absolutely, totally, perfectly meshed with the fundamental laws of ecology of this planet. But it takes a change of our thinking and our feeling inside, because I plant 100 trees and 90 of them die. That hurts. It's like, oh, maybe spend $600. And it takes a little bit of time to find those plants.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense just because coming at this from a totally new perspective. I feel like I'm talking to people who are trying to read this book, have my questions are.
Well, you are. You are. And so now let's say you go ahead and plant these 100 trees. And then you see, like, out of these 100 trees, say 50 of them are suffering. Some are suffering really, really bad. Let's say we let 50 of them die because they're suffering. Well, then out of the 50 you got left, they're not suffering. Well, now we can give them a little boost. We can kind of nudge them along a little bit. Now let's find out the soil test. Like Midwest Bioag's a good one. Logan one. Yeah, basically the Albrecht methodology. And then you get that soil test. Now you find out what those particular varieties prefer, and then you see where the efficiencies are, and just nudge it a little bit. We're not broadcasting over acres and acres. We've got these only 50 trees left, and we don't have to give them a little bit. It's like taking vitamins instead of being on life support. Because if you had those 50 trees that are suffering in your place, if you want to go ahead and do the input game and keep those alive, that's life support. And we have life support with those guys forever because they don't belong there. The genetics are not suited to the place. So you can do it with sheer total utter neglect, and your losses will be greater, but your survivors will be even more spectacular because they are the ones that are adapted to your site, and there's nothing you can do to kill them. I got hazelnut bushes I'm trying to get rid of, and it's almost impossible because this is like the place that they are the happiest because they're totally site adapted. Excuse me, ma'am. I signed a book for you. Can I have that sign? Is that helpful?
Yeah, extremely helpful. What do you think about, you had some pictures of red currant bushes too, right? I know there's pictures of black currant. They're also great. My husband is from Russia. He loves black currant.
Well, actually, the things with currants and gooseberries, they are a co-host to a disease called white pine blister rust. And there are still some states in this country where it's against the law to plant currants. You go out in the woods and there's currants all over the place. It's like, why don't you arrest those plants? Because I got property up their name. And it's the northern forest. I should have currants underneath the understory, but I can't bring it into the state. It's against the law. There's freaking currants and gooseberries on the land that I own already. And it is a co-host to the disease. And the whole disease thing, you get into the ecology of the disease. In order to make sure that we have resistant plants, pines, we want pines that are resistant to white pine blister rust. We have to have enough white pine blister rust in the area to infect all the pines. So the ones that get the white pine blister rust die, and the ones that don't are the ones that are now casting seed. So now by putting more disease into the area, we find the plants that are resistant to it naturally, genetically. And that's like my organic inspectors, they flip out. See, what do you do for pest control? I say, well, it's called population ecology. I need enough pests in order to develop the diseases that affect my pests and to draw the predators that eat my pests. They can't handle that. It's like, no, you're supposed to spray when you hit an economic threshold. So if you keep doing that, you'll never get the benefits. You'll never get the benefits of predation and the disease that will affect your pest. You have to have enough of that food source to feed the things that eat it. That's why I did it, because I mentioned the talk. You guys all at my presentation yesterday, who was not? You weren't, okay. One of the lines that I use is this: you go to any of the workshop around here, other horticulture, agriculture workshops, they basically are addressing two fundamental issues. One, how do I keep this thing alive that wants to die? And two, how do I kill this thing that wants to live? And then the answers that they give you are do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And doing is an expense, it's an input. Whereas, first I'll flip that question around. If the thing wants to die, so be it, it's gone. I am interested in something that takes no care whatsoever.
It's cheaper dead.
Right? It's a lot cheaper dead, right?
I remember in an interview you did, you used the illustration of the thistle and how your neighbors, it was a big problem for them as a weed, and you turned it into a money, income source.
So it's making $3.50 a bushel for thistle flowers. Sell it to a medicinal herb company, which is not a niche market. If you can supply one. So.
Also good vegetable.
Pardon?
Good vegetable too.
I suppose. I've never been impressed with it.
What do you think of Sepultura?
Except Walter's, look what he's done to the planet. I don't, what I think of him as a person may or may not be relevant, but look what he's done. Look what he's done to that planet. That's incredible. Cool. And there was some of the things that are starting to really be of interest to me is I saw two different studies that were done. One that was in one of the movies that was out about them, is that of all the endangered species in Austria, like 90% of them are to be found on this farm. So if you've got 100 species that are endangered, like 80 or 90 of them live on this place. Well, then they did a follow-up research, and they found out that basically like 75 to 80% of all of the population, it's like you got all these endangered species, that's where they live. That's their prime habitat. I thought that was interesting and cool, but it wasn't until this spring. This guy, Peter Allen, who's been standing in my booth there, he's a savanna ecologist. He kind of discovered me because he was been doing restoration work. Savanna restoration. Well, restoration out in the world means let's take a snapshot of a day gone by and let's force this landscape now to conform to our idea of what nature was back in 1870, March 3rd. And then they spend all this money, they plant all these species, and then they force it to stay in that exact form instead of living, with the natural cycle. So you've been doing restoration work for years. It says then the 2008 economic thing crashed, and all these nonprofits are running out of money. They can't afford to keep their restorations going. He's like racking his brain. How can we help the restoration to pay for itself? And so he's like, wow, we should start, harvesting the crops in this restoration. And all of a sudden he bumps into me. He's like, he was talking about it from a restoration's point of view, and I'm talking about it from an agriculturist's point of view. So he started to study my farm. He's like, this is rare and endangered, whatever. I'm like, what? Where? Like, right here, check it out. This is okay, so what are you doing to manage this? I'm like, I'm raising squash and asparagus and chestnuts and cows. Yeah, and then he's trying to figure out what have I done that has enabled these plants to start to flourish. Well, then he brought in these bird people. Bird song is insane at our place. It's a crazy amount of birds. And then he's identifying them all by sound. So he brought in this bird researcher from Madison to come out to the farm. He walked halfway on the farm and halfway back, because by the time we got halfway on the farm, he couldn't keep track anymore. So there was over 125 different birds that he identified. Of course, it was a migration time. It's got all these neotropicals coming through, all these birds that live in the jungles and stuff like that. And to me, it was just like this, amazingly piercing bird noise that keeps you awake after 3 o'clock in the morning. So all of a sudden go, oh, wow, that's kind of happening here too. It's like we're creating these incredible habitats for endangered species and wildlife. I think a lot of his stuff, like the hugelkultur thing. It's funny because when I was a little kid, my dad was one of these biodynamic guys, and his parents, his family, the male side of his family, they're all woodcutters. They came from England, and so coppice forestry was all they did. And then when you take what you do is that they're running a coppice business. They're cutting this for lumber, this is for poles, this is for basketry. All these different products are coming off of your cutting when you're out cutting. And then you take all the brush and you put it in the piles and you put dirt on top of it, and that's your raised beds for your garden. So for me, it's like, so one of the things when you have all that hardwoody organic matter in there, though, is the fact that it goes way fungal. And there are also, not all fungus is good fungus. There are fungus that are pathological to a lot of plants. Just keep that open so people can come in if they want. And so you end up with more pathologies. And it will also select for the plants that are more adapted to highly fungal situations. And so to all of a sudden see like this hugelkultur thing take off, it's like, what is it with Americans? Some new idea comes along. It's like, this is the answer to the world. And they have no clue about any of it. And they've never worked with it before. They've never tried it before. And then they go, promote. It's like, it's not like the answer. It's one of the suite of answers. It's a technique. It's a technology that has its place. Even like the terraces and swales. There was a guy who was just in here, one of the first guys. Can you guys go ahead and leave that door open so people can come and go without making too much noise? I think the clacking of the door is more annoying than people in the hall. And one of his land is so shallow, instead of deep, but it's so shallow that there's no need in the world for swales. This a week ago, 1 week ago, I'm in Iowa giving a workshop on keyline design, water management, growth farm, and this guy. He's all like freaking out, doesn't know what to do, because he's going this permaculture direction, he needs some help. And, okay, fine. He explains everything, draws pictures. So we go out to his place. It's got like a 1 acre lot, and he had really nice little curved, all kinds of edible woody plants planted. He's got some animals, like a goat and chickens and whatever. And then he went to a Shepard workshop, and they called in this excavator. He spent $2,000 making these trenches like 4 feet wide, 8 feet deep, these mounds on the south side. I mean, this is like on a 1 acre lot. He says, I can't, this is totally unworkable. It's like, yeah, it is. This is appropriate maybe for 3,500 feet up in the Austrian Alps. This is totally inappropriate for this thing. So the hugelkultur is appropriate in its time and its place for specific plants. Making huge, like, World War I fighting trenches is appropriate for its time and its place, and it wasn't on a 1 acre lot that was shallow. So all those things, that's part of what I think about a lot of the things with permaculture and a lot of things, with sepulture, it's appropriate in time and place, but not everywhere. It's not universal. Who raised the hand?
I'm curious about your pigs, and do they damage your soils at all? I really love soils, but I can imagine pigs everywhere, and I just...
Well, with the pigs, I thought I mentioned it. Were you at the workshop and all that?
I went to the short one.
Okay, yeah. I put rings in their noses, one through here and one through here, and from when they're weaned. And so I also use the breeds that don't plow as much, Tamworths and Berkshires and favorites. I have a Tamworth Berkshire crosses the ones that I'm running mostly, and they can't when they're little because they learn that it really hurts them bad. Of course, the lady with the nose ring, I said, did that stop you from moving in the ground? She said, I haven't done it since. So that's what I do there. And then when you're having soils in the system, like what scale are we talking here? Acre versus 100 acres?
Yeah, small.
Small. So if you're smaller, your paddocks are probably going to end up overlapping the place where swales are. And so they'll get trampled down or smooth off over time. But if you're larger, or if you have the ability to do an electric fence, you go in the alleys between the swales, and so the swale is at the bottom part. The fence is just as the berm starts. And then nobody walks on the berm because that's supposed to be nice and soft so the water can soak through it. And then the downhill side of the, I don't have a whiteboard here, on the downhill side of the berm is your trees and your other fence. So the tree and the berm is fenced off from the alley. So alley, swale, berm, tree, fence. So alley, swale, fence, berm, tree, fence, alley, swale, fence, berm, tree, fence, alley. How many times I can repeat that actually here, right?
But these have plastic little rings because we have like a fence.
No, they're copper rings. They're copper. Well, yeah, if they had plastic rings and they still touch the nice, tender, moist little pink nose, and they're only this high to the ground, they're grounded really well. Pigs are really grounded well. They respect the fence. People take the fence down, and I'm trying to move them, and I'll kind of look at this empty space and, well, it was there yesterday. No, it might be there. And then all of a sudden they'll be grazing along. They look around, they're like, oh crap! And they run back. So they're really cool with fence. Cattle are a different thing.
Can you talk about where you think the root stock or how? To me, that seems like it would be one of the biggest expenses is actually.
All right. A couple of things. I just love what you did because you set up a perfect example I couldn't really get into. This expense. If I have approximately 1,000 trees per acre on 100 acres, what was the cost of doing business? What was the cost of getting those trees in the ground? If it only cost me $1 per tree. 1,000 trees per acre, 100 acres. It's 100,000 trees, right? Now, if you give it $1 per tree, that's $100,000 just on trees. Well, when I was in here, I don't know if you heard it earlier when I mentioned that how do we kill things that want to stay alive, how do we keep things alive that want to die. Now you know I'm killing is about more trees probably than it's staying alive. So we're not talking $100,000 worth of trees. We're pushing, and I think I've calculated out, it's over $1 million worth of trees on the property. It's like, holy crap, what an expense. No. We're not on that side of the equation anymore. We're on the other side of the equation. What an incredible opportunity. What an incredible profit center this becomes for you. So, and the story, the first time it dawned on me, I needed 500 apple rootstock. And at the time it cost $1 per rootstock. So looking at the catalogs, when you're buying nursery stock for a larger project, go get your nursery catalog, and we call them and say, hey, yeah, so. Oh, yeah, well, who are you getting it from this year? And you find out the wholesaler that they're getting it from. And then you talk to the wholesaler, whereas, you go all the way back to find the originator, and then you get their price list. And this one year when I needed 500 apple rootstock, the price was $500. And then I looked for 1,000 apple rootstock, which was $600. So I spent the $600. I put my 500 apple trees in the ground. Now I've got 500 apple trees left, and now I have to earn $600 by selling 500 apple trees, and everything's paid for free. So all of a sudden I turn around and I offer you an apple tree for $1.50, and you look at the catalog and you get it for 10. Who are you going to buy it from? So then I look at like retail. If you're paying $6 for a tree, I can buy it super wholesale. I'm not in the nursery business to be in the nursery business. I'm just buying trees and selling you surplus. You can undercut the retail nurseries and catalogs by a couple of bucks, and everybody has enough friends to say, hey, man, I'm buying a big tree order, let's split this. And you give them a deal, they're going to pay less by getting it from you than they would have if they got it themselves, because they don't want 1,000. You don't even want 1,000. You only want 500. But if you bought 1,000, you have this horrible problem that now you have to dispose of an extra 500 trees and pay for it. And if you really want to play it good, you only do it to recover your costs. So all your trees go in for free, and there's no taxable income off of that, so you pay no taxes, which is also part of the whole strategy. It's playing that economics game. So anytime you hear yourself say, wow, that's expensive, a light should now go off in your head and say, aha, how can I make money with this one? And it's an equation. This equals that. Our whole entire culture is on how much can we put in, how much can we push, how much can we do this, how much can we do this. And if you look at it from that side of the equation, it's like, this is expensive. Well, the other side of the equation works. What can I not do? it was the example that I used the other day. Someone's been farming, and they're losing $10,000 a year for the past 3 years of their life. They would be far better off to do absolutely nothing than if they farmed at all. So for zero money, for zero investment, they can make an incalculable return on investment and be $10,000 off better. Yeah, but I'm farming, I'm growing. It's like, and you're losing $10,000 a year? What the hell's the point? So doing nothing is far more affordable. Far more affordable. Yes. Hit him.
What if,
How about the same time? Go. I got 2 years.
It's on kind of the same line of thought. But on that, I mean, you have a certain amount of fixed costs that you can't go. I mean, if you have your land paid for, you have tax. So there's a certain amount in each operation. You have a fixed cost.
Right. And that's why it's different for everybody. That's why there are no blanket approaches. This is a general set of principles and ideas that we apply individually by the operation.
That's the other way of getting around property taxes.
I haven't figured that one out yet. But we're not immune from having to play the game in quotes.
You can't completely get out of the system yet.
Right. We have to we just have to outlast the system. Yeah. I was going to go off. Come on, me? Get passionately excited about something. So now what were you going to say?
I was going to say about, when you have your smaller trees, I don't know if you talked about this earlier, but dealing with deer, do you just let the deer take some of those little trees, or do you actually have a strategy of keeping them off the trees?
Back to, stun, shear, photo, right? That's one technique. Well, now we can nudge things along the way, and for browsing deer, if you want to keep them off the trees, probably the least expensive way is take a dozen eggs and drop in a 5-gallon bucket of water and stir them up with a stick and splash it on with whisk broom. And they just don't like it. Every couple of 3 weeks, and usually, at least in our area, the critical times are like late winter when they're running out of stuff out in the woods, and then before stuff really greens up. Once the alfalfa in our area is up vigorous and green, there's no deer. I mean, they're going for the nice pastures. And in the fall, just after hunting season, when they're no longer preoccupied, then they start going looking for the trees. Those seem to be the only ones. But then sheer numbers, if you plant, a patch of sweet corn this big, fools will eat everything. If you plant a patch of sweet corn that's 10 acres, you'll start eating around the edges. If you plant 100 acres of sweet corn, so if you do numbers, that's another way to overwhelm. So if you're going to do numbers, you're overwhelming the tree nibblers. You're getting a better deal on the price because now you got extras to sell to friends, and now you have the different genetic variants. If you're buying all seedlings, now you have more seedlings to choose from. Did I talk about Yahtzee at the workshop? When I went to Wisconsin, think about how crazy this guy is. I'm going to go to a state. I'm going to start industries, not just a farm, industries, and 3 different crops that don't even grow in that state. I'm going to start the chestnut, the hazelnut, and the pine nut industry in the state of Wisconsin. And so I go there and I found all the information from all the experts that I possibly can. I call the grand poobah of all chestnuts, and I really acknowledge this man. He is probably the most knowledgeable person on the face of the planet when it comes to chestnuts. He really does, no more than anybody else. And so I said, well, what do? He says, well, for one thing, chestnuts don't grow in Wisconsin. There's no data that shows that people grow chestnuts in Wisconsin. So he's trying to see data which doesn't exist. And I said, well, then what should I do? He says, well, first of all, what you do is you have to choose grafted, selected cultivars that have a proven track record in your area. Well, if I'm in an area where no one's ever done it before, there is no proven track record. So there's 2 things already he's telling me that it's like I'm not in his rule book anymore. I'm not playing by the same game plan he's got. So, well, then you plant 30 feet apart. Because when they're 30 feet apart, that tree will fill that space completely. It's not completely closing it. So that ends up getting math is like 59 plants per acre. Okay, I understand that. And it still seemed to me, so then when I first bought chestnuts, I bought a herd from over here, it's like a couple hundred, and a herd from over here, and a herd from over here, and a herd from over there. And I planted them, I couldn't do it 30 feet apart, so it's just too far apart. I'm going to go 25. So I put them 25 feet apart, and because I was buying seedlings from all over the place, I had these mixed genetics. The very second year, I noticed some of them had flowers. We had this little tree this big with a flower on it, they're wind pollinated, and another one 30 feet away, 25 feet away, that might as well have been on the moon. it won't pollinate. Then I thought to myself, it's like, wait, I got a nut here, and a nut, actually 100 feet away, because there was only a few that had that really early flowering thing. It's like, I could have a row of trees, all the like 500 trees that I got, if I put them in a row 100 feet long, maybe I get pollination between this early one and that early one. And over time, as soon as these other ones start to produce, I can figure out who the losers are really quick. And I likened it to playing Yahtzee. This professor was trying to get me to play Yahtzee with only 3 dice. Yahtzee, you take 5 dice, and if you roll 5 of a kind, you got a Yahtzee. If I give you 3 dice, can you roll 5 of a kind with 1 roll? You can't do it. Now, what if I gave you 500 dice? How many 5 of a kinds do you think you could roll? Quite a few. So you go and you buy these wholesale quantities of the seedling plants, not the fancy grafted cultivars. And since you bought the wholesale quantities and you sold a bunch to friends, they're now part of your experiment. They now know that they can get cheap trees from you. So you still have their trees because they're your friends and you know where they are and you can get genetic control if you want it. Now you plant high density too close together. You're now playing Yahtzee with 5,000 dice, and you can start choosing the ones that are performing perfectly on your site. One of the women earlier, she asked, well, I'm at the soil test phase, I got all the soil tests, these people say that soil test doesn't work, these people say that soil test doesn't work, and I'm sitting down and they tell me you got to do this, and I have no idea what they're talking about, I don't understand. Everywhere on planet Earth, there are plant communities that live perfectly healthy, vigorous, and vibrant, and they show no deficiency symptoms in them. All around the Earth, there have been human cultures that are living in place, and they show no deficiency diseases. And then you do a soil test, and everywhere you go, there's deficiencies. It's like, time out, how does this match? All right, so first of all, what has a track record? Planet Earth, biology, ecology. Everywhere on planet Earth, there are plants that are totally locally site-adapting to grow perfectly healthy, vigorously, productively, and it's good enough to support vibrant, rich human cultures with healthy individuals in that human culture. So if we plug ourselves back into the way ecology does it, the way nature does it, well, how it does it is an oak tree grows up 10 million acorns. Out of those 10 million acorns, maybe 2 or 3 end up surviving until you get big enough to produce their own acorns. That's the same process that we're using, but we're accelerating it because we're putting closer spacing, shorter rows, and we have a much more selective criteria. My selective criteria, I'll put a nursery bed from here to where these knitters are sitting over here. I'll make like a sandbox out of 2x10s, put half-inch mesh hardwood cloth on the bottom of one sandbox and bury it ground level and fill it back for the third. So it looks like a garden bed, but it's got this little rim of wood around it. Now no rodents can get in underneath. So then I put my seed, my tree seed, and I cover the whole entire surface. How big is a little tree when it sprouts? It's not too much more bigger than this. How much room does it need? Hardly any at all. How much soil does it need? It doesn't need any soil because it's got this nut feeding it while it grows. So from here to there, I can get probably 2,000 trees in a little seedling bed like this. Well, now I make another sandbox, put half-inch mesh hardwood cloth on it, and I put it on top with the screen on top, so it's protected from rodents. It's kind of screwed together with deck screws. And then you let the seeds just grow in there naturally, because if they've fallen off the tree in the fall, they get buried by leaves, and so I'll mulch it over the wintertime. Take the mulch out in the springtime. And then at the next spring, the trees will sprout, they'll come up through the screen, they'll grow. And if they get caught and tangled, they don't make it through the screen, do I care? No, I don't. And so then you leave it there all summer long, all the next winter, and then fall and spring. So if you put seed in the ground this way right now, in spring of 2014, you can go ahead, just as the soil is thawing before all the trees start to break buds, then you lift that top box off. You've got 1,000 trees that all it did was cost me seed. And he was mentioned in contacted Lawyer Nursery. They used to be exclusively a wholesaler, but with the economic downturn, they opened up sales to everybody. They have tree seed. And you can go buy tree seed, it's cheap. And what they are, of course, they are not grafted, genetically selected cultivars. They're seeds. They're seedlings, and every seed is a genetically unique individual. We have no idea how it's going to perform unless we actually put it in the ground and turn it loose. And so now you've got Like, let's see, it was a guy, it was $65 for, I think it was 5 pounds of honey locust seed. The honey locust is the size of like a white bean, navy bean. And so how many navy beans in 5 pounds? Holy crap. How many honey locust trees you got to select from? Now we put them in the ground. Now after we take them out of that nursery bed, now we plant them in our row. And let's say our selection criteria is you will grow very fast. You will produce seeds within 4 years, 5 years. Pick a number, 3 years if you want. You will produce seed within 5 years. You will be pest-free and disease-free. Those are your selection criteria. If you're not, cut you down. And out of that 2,000 seeds, or however many thousand seeds it was, you'll end up with a few that meet your criteria. Well, now they're special trees, because these are next generation. So here's our own home herd that finally meets our criteria, and every year we bring in another herd, and we just keep getting more and more and more and more that are perfectly site-adapted, no soil amendments, no pest control, no fertility, no disease control. Once they start producing their own seed that you're planting out yourself, you've got these site-adapted varieties that are working great on your site. Instead of bringing in 10,000 seeds a year, that's when I'll go out and I'll buy a grafted variety. Bring in the grafted variety. I'm not after the seed on this grafted variety. What am I after? I'm after the pollen. Because I want to bring this pecan that's like this big into my little bitty pecans here, because pecans don't grow in Wisconsin either. So I got pecans growing in Wisconsin, year after year after year, planting, seedling. Now I'm at the stage, it's like, okay, now I want to bring in a paper shell or two that hopefully won't freeze to the ground and get the pollen from that into my gene. So just like cattle raising, we are herding the trees now. We're hens.
And first spring, do you take the cloth off or the
No, you leave it for its entire stay there.
But when you take it up, won't it be the leaves that covered and go right through the wood? You're doing it before the leaves come out.
Yeah, you do it when you lift that screen off. It's in the spring before all the buds move. There'll be some that have branches that get torn. There'll be some that have some leaves. But for the cost of a couple pounds of seed, you're ripping off a few branches. So what? Because we're also playing a different game. Remember, we are not. All right, Michael Phillips and Elliot Coleman are masters. Michael Phillips knows more about biologically handling and dealing with a apple tree than anybody else in the world. And I granted that I actually used to live in the same community as him. So read that, learn it, and understand what he's talking about. And now, let's go back on the other side of the equation and play by a different rule book and take what nature's doing with him in our back pocket. We're going to be planting 10,000 trees. We're going to be planting seedlings. So we're already out of the rule book because he's planting 50 per acre and he's planting grafted cultivars. Well, now we start to have issues with our trees. He would say spray this or trim that or do this and do that. And we're going to say good riddance. And so if we're shredding branches and tearing leaves and some of them get thrown away, we can't afford, financially and time-wise, we can't afford to input and spend time and waste our life on stuff that wants to die anyways. Because we're creating, nature is incredibly abundant. It produces 10 million seeds per plant or whatever. We have all kinds of surplus to deal with. We don't live in the scarcity world anymore because the reason why there is a scarcity world is because the whole entire system degrades the resource base. It cuts everything down, it sucks it out of the ground, it mines it, it pollutes it. We are in an A-grading system if we're on this side of the equation. We are creating more abundance than we were inherited.
So you're talking quarter-inch mesh or
Half part of
plastic
it.
or
Because it's got to have an opportunity to get through. If it's too skinny, then that was a management issue. We all have management issues. That's the galvanized. It's the galvanized. Galvanized hardware cloth because, you don't want the mice to be able to chew through it. Let's take someone from over here who hasn't gone yet. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, you got the idea. It seems to me you've talked a little bit about the amount of acreage that you grow at a project like this. Well, I'll just start with my own example. With 25 acres, we do in like a gardening mode, and I ask that because there's a whole lot of emerald ash that died on one side, and you could get started with something else. Would you use some of your techniques on these?
I'd use it on this piece the size of a backyard. Because the rules of ecology apply to planet Earth. They're the same rules. It's just that with smaller situations you won't have, if he's going to go out on his 100 acres and do 100 zillion trees, and you're going to do it with 100 trees, he's going to have a better chance of hitting Yahtzees than you. And what also does happen, like with seed breeding, here's one of the things that turtle tree seeds and seed savers do. They have all these heritage seeds that small growers grow. I'm a squash grower. Have been to all the different workshops, and also have a background in genetics. If you take acorn squash, for example, which is my specialty, and if you want the acorn squash seed to express all of the known possibilities of acorn squash, you have to have 40 acres in order for it to express every single gene. That's just a chance thing. So what he could do is he's putting out these trees. He has a better chance of having all these genes expressed. And then you can look through all these different trees and pick the one that he wants. On a smaller property, if you only have 5,000 of these things, you're going to have traits that disappear. They actually do disappear. And not that you're trying to lose them, it's just by the sheer numbers of what you were doing, you did. So all these ecological principles are broadly applied on the planet, so everything can be expressed. But in your little microcosm with the boundary right, you're going to possibly use traits. And when we select who is the guys from Utah, if somebody from Utah here on a really alkaline site, somebody else with a really acid site, when you pick a variety or you select 4 varieties that are adapted to your ground, and she selects varieties that are adapted to her ground, both of you are losing traits. She's got traits that she's growing on acid, you're growing on alkaline. So we are losing traits, and that's why we both need, every once in a while, we're bringing all this genetic material together again and selecting it individually on our site. Did I show the picture of the pear tree with all the different varieties on it? You plant, if you got a small backyard, you put one pear tree in the ground, and then you graft a different variety to every single branch. So you have the same root, the same site conditions, and you have 20 different varieties, and it's super, super simple. You look at this branch, is there any fruit on it? It's like, nope, cut it off. Well, is there fruit on this one? Ooh, yeah, it's all the scab and nasty, whatever, cut it off. This one over here, no pests, no diseases, heavily loaded year after year. That's the branch we want, and then we cut tips off of it and we graft it back on all the way to the other roots. So you go through that variety selection phase first. You have like a dozen varieties of pear on one tree. And then maybe after 5 or 6 years, now you're down to 2 or 3 varieties per tree. That's the same process we would use on a single tree versus 100 acres. Same process, just slightly different application. Yes, Catherine.
I have 3 questions about these apples. The chestnut was the Chinese earlier.
Where are you?
Virginia.
Go with the Chinese. The American gets the blight, and the seed sources for most Americans are coming from the West Coast where they don't have blight yet. The reason why I have American genetics in my stock is because it's too cold for most Chinese. They freeze the ground. But Americans will get the blight. So if you plant Americans, I highly recommend that you do. Maybe you'll discover one that doesn't get it. Go ahead and plant it, but just understand that you will get blight with your Americans. With the Chinese, you have those of you who are like USDA zone 6 or so. Try Empire Nursery out of Ohio, or Forest Keeling out of Missouri. And then those of you who are even warmer, Virginia, you could probably get away with Dunstan, Dunstan. Chestnut.
Second, I want to know, we talked for just a minute yesterday about topography.
Oh, you did? Then it's somebody else's turn. Oh.
Well, the thing I don't understand, because I was in the room and read on this class, but the thing I don't understand is, let's say I've got something that looks like a Coliseum. It's not been made into a Coliseum, it's just a big hill that's kind of round and it goes down into this deep depression. And it's very wet, or very fast, but stuck in it. Then on the top, it's very dry, it's like concrete.
Right.
So, like Jerry Brunei suggested, and willows, or not you, these sprouting willows. But my thought is, let's say I plant things in these beautiful swales and earthworms and all that. How do the cows, it's a rectangle, but the topography is the shape of going across them. How do I get the cows to move through? Do they walk along the swales?
What ends
Or
up
do they
happening,
go
the whole
straight?
key line design, they call it key for a reason, because once you find your key line, in the book I describe all the book, everybody wrote a book. Yeah, okay. Key line, according to the Australian definition, is only one of them in the landscape. Well, there's actually more than that, and I'm still arguing with the Australians about that. And if you're on a property that doesn't have the key line, all of a sudden you can't apply the technique. Well, how do we apply the technique? Well, on your Coliseum here, the water falls on your property evenly. The shape of the land concentrates the water in the low spots, and it dries off the high spots. So what we want to do is we want to take that water that fell evenly and keep it that way. So starting up at the head of the bowl, up high in the landscape, we'll have these paths or swales, or just even if it's just using subsoil, all of our cultivation patterns now follow this slight downhill slope from a high part of the valley downhill to the ridges. Once you find the sweet spot, I call it in the book, everything is now keyed off of this key line. Now your access corridors are just uphill from this line. There's a fence just on the uphill side of a berm if you're going to have a berm on it. The trees are just below it, and there's another fence below that, and there's an alley. I make all of your alleys parallel to one another, and this pattern of spreading water from the valley to the ridges, from the valley to the ridges, it will dry off that wet spot bottom of your valley, and it will moisten your ridges if you're dry. So we're taking a problem. Remember, when you get the word problem, it's spelling correctly. So you got a muck puddle at the bottom of this valley here. That belongs on your ridges, where it fell in the first place. That's the water that belongs up there. The land is shaped, concentrated in the valley. So now you've got all these parallels that are taking water from the valley high to the ridges lower. Now your cattle are walking on the contours this way. Your roads are going on the contour. It's not, it's slightly off the contour. It's all going on parallels. And it's hard to wrap your brain around it, just thinking about it, and sometimes even looking at pictures. And this is what I was talking to yesterday, and she just couldn't understand. Yeah, but it's so steep. It's like, if they're walking on contour, it's perfectly flat. This is all at the same elevation. It's perfectly flat. The energy you use in your vehicles when you're driving around on this now you have fuel savings because they're not going. Your animals are happier. As soon as you lay out a key line system, guess where the animals go? They'll just walk it because hey, this is cool. It's a lot easier. So much more energy efficient to move around here and spreading the water from the valleys to the ridges.
And the last question is marketing. If you're doing all this work, putting in all these trees and birds and stuff, do you have time to go to the farmers market?
Farmers market? that's right. That's where the gardeners go. That's right. I'm a farmer. I don't have time for that.
So people just come and find like holidays.
Now, when it comes to selling direct to the consumer, small quantities, yeah, people are coming to me. So the marketing cost of that is zero. Everything else, and here's where I differ again from like Extension or any small business association. They say, have your marketing plan, find your markets before you grow anything. Well, that's not based in the real world. I'm going to do some market research. I'm going to call a buyer. Hello, Mr. Buyer of whatever it is I'm selling. Hey, I'm thinking about possibly, perhaps, maybe getting to in the future, and he is in the business or she is in the business of buying stuff. If you don't have anything to sell, he doesn't have time for you. Grow it. There are 7 billion people on this planet. There is no such thing as a niche market. This happens, this is really difficult to get right now because the hazelnut growers in Wisconsin, when I first got there were 0. Now there's about 30 of us that have planting. But there's just no market for it. There's just no market for it. I know because I go to farmer's market and I've got 400 pounds and I can only sell 20. I take it to my co-op and I can only sell 20. I still have 200 pounds left. There's no market for it. It's like, no. The real problem is you don't have enough to access the real market. And us as a group of hazelnut growers in the state, all together, we don't have enough to access the real market. Because I call that buyer one phone call, the entire crop in the state of Wisconsin could go out the door in one day. We don't have an industry at all. We don't have enough. Same for thistle flowers, elderberry pollen for medicinal herbs. If you have too much stuff and it can't sell, you're in the wrong market. There's 7 billion people on this planet. Everything is for sale. Everything is for sale in huge, massive industrial quantities. And that's actually, Fred Kirschman talks about this, about the agriculture of the middle, is that kind of disappeared right in the past century. Everybody used to be small, medium scale, whatever. So when this upscale thing happened, people who are medium scale, if you're medium scale and I'm selling in the big markets, your expenses are higher because you're medium scale, so you tend to fall out. Well, if you're bottom scale and you're niching, you tend to get a higher price, but you're selling a lower volume. This guy's selling a higher volume and a lower price. The middle has disappeared. And we have a situation now where we have the megas and the micros. And what we need to do for the micros, either A, we got to jump across that gap right away. And with hazelnuts, in order to afford all the processing equipment, we've done the business plans. If you want to get into hazelnuts in the upper Midwest and do it on your own as a real grower with real markets that pays you a real wage, you need 600 acres of hazelnut. And this is the cost of the investments, the equipment, all that kind of stuff. Now you're in business, or you're one of the megas. Well, now what do we do as the little guys? Is we can't compete with one another. We all go to farmers markets. It's so stupid. All of us sustainable ag people, and I'm selling for nickel less and nickel less. We're driving the price down and burying ourselves. Instead of forming a cartel, pooling our resources together, and accessing a real market with enough product that's piled in. I don't care if you're a co-op, an LLC, an Inc. or whatever. We have to stick together as little guys and maintain our independence as individuals and families. But when it comes to getting our product into the real market, feeding human beings, we need tons. So we got to figure out how to stick together. Was it Ben Franklin who said, or was it one of the Adamses who said, if we don't hang together, we'll surely hang separately? Yeah. Farmers, especially Midwestern farmers, they have the best track record of hanging separately. Ken.
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe you have an anecdote about a crop you found that you could produce a bunch of and how you discovered the person self-producer.
Okay, I did that in my 2-day pre-conference workshop, whatever. Well, I'll do another story. I was at farmer's market. I'm going to be this 28-year-old kid who did my piece of farm property, the barefoot, hair down to here, my little African shirt and all that kind of whatever. And at the farmer's market in a white brick town with a bunch of these crew-cut people with bill caps kind of walking around in nice clean jeans and a sharp white shirt. And I'm selling cucumbers. He's a certified organic, man, like 50 cents a cucumber. This is a deal. Look how really the most healthy, wonderful, incredible cucumbers in the world. And I got the story, and I'm like selling it. It's working my heart out. And then, I apologize for anybody who is a little old lady who might like to become one someday. She heard the story already, so I'll use it. So she has a smile. This little old lady with a real sour pucker puss on her face comes up. And in her hand, she's got this finger, and she's got a dream catcher. It's like a 2-foot grapevine with a nickel worth of dental floss, making a little spiderweb thing. A ducky feather tied at the bottom of it, and a little plastic bird and hot glue to the top. And she comes up to my table with this sour face. She grabs my cucumber and takes her thumbnail and goes, puts it down. He keeps putting it, just like, all right, do I kill her? Call cops. Do I sneeze? What do I do? How do I get her to stop ruining my cucumbers? And then she finally picks one up and says, how dare you sell this for 50 cents a cucumber? They're selling theirs for 25, so we'll go buy it over there. And as she walks away, the little price tag on this little dream catcher flutters that says $14. Now what should I do? Traditionally the reaction, we need to educate the consumer and the benefits and the health, good, fresh, organic, no pesticide, blah, food, nutrient density, whatever you want to sell. Or I can say, I'm twisting grapevines in a circle selling for $15. So that's one little anecdote. Another one was, how did it originally happen? But somehow someone jokingly told me that I needed to go to Walmart and get some liver detox stuff. We must do liver detox, herbal medicine stuff, like a little pill. They must have been having some recreational ethanol or something. So, they said that, go to the, I better go to Walmart and get some of that herbal detox, whatever that is. So I went to Walmart, I got this little bottle, I still have the very same bottle to this day at my table, I showed it to you. And looking at that, it's like, funny joke. And I looked at it, it's like, whoa, thistle flowers, dandelion roots, prickly ash seed, burdock root, all these other things. It's like, hang on a second. Prickly ash. I don't know if you guys have prickly ash. This little shrubby thing, these little thorns all over it. And it just, if I got prickly ash, because I got this old field that I'm not letting go through succession, well, succession wants to take over and it leads the charge with these thorny little things that animals don't like to browse. So I look on the bottle, it says distributed by. So I took up the phone. Hey, hi there, my name's Mark Shepard, and I'm a big prickly ash seed grower from Southwest Wisconsin. I've got to talk to your buyer. Oh, okay. You're talking with James. I'll call James. Thank you very much. So then whoever they tell you to go call, so then you call James, the broker, and the broker's like, I'm like, hey, I'm Mark Shepard, big prickly ash grower from Southwest Wisconsin. You guys any influence for prickly ash seed right now? He's like, well, actually, yeah, we're in short supply right now. We need 2 tons. How soon can you get it here? I'm like, well, I'll have to check with the guys out the cooler, see what we got on stock. So they hang up the phone and they go, crap, how much is that? So I pull some prickly ash seed and I get myself a pound together, and it's like a pile that's half the size of this room. But their hand was priced like you wouldn't believe. So now I got to figure out how on earth am I going to get, a ton of prickly ash seed together at that price? We're talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. That's a pile of cash. It would really be nice to have that shot in the arm. I don't have enough to do it on my property. You don't have enough to do it on your property. But all together, we would have enough. So now it's like, okay, I've been a member of Organic Valley. I've been helping organize these produce growers and egg growers. I know how much work it is to get farmers to sit together in a room and then cooperate with one another. So now what I'm going to do is put in all my personal effort and personal time to get all these farmers to sit together in a room, to convince them to harvest seed that they've never harvested before, to convince them that I actually have a market for the price that I'm saying. It would take years. And so I call those, we are kind of committed. I just had I had a little overage right now. And then you start talking. You get this relationship going with this guy. He finds out a little bit about you. Whole Foods. As soon as he says a name or a market, boom, I'm remembering that name and that market. So, I deal with them too. I talk about a couple times. I deal with them too. I deal with them too. So pretty soon you're an in guy. And he knows that I don't have enough quantity for his real markets. And he also knows that he has people that want to buy from him that are small customers. So here's this guy who's a broker. He wants to take a semi-load and flip a semi-load. One call, one semi-load, his commission's bigger. You got these little customers over here that have like little needs. It's a pain in the ass to deal with these little customers. So a couple weeks later, all of a sudden, I get this phone call from this medicinal herb company. He says, hey, Dennis just gave me your number. He says, you've got prickly ash seed. Well, yeah. How much do you need? About 10 pounds. Oh, sure, we got plenty of that in surplus. And we set up the deal. Smaller quantity, smaller guy. And he says, hey, would you also happen to have, comfrey leaves? I'm like, we got comfrey. We'll have to wait till the next season, all kind of what you're looking for and whatever. So I got over 2 linear miles of comfrey that I planted for this guy. And he said, you got thistle flowers? Yeah, I got thistle flowers. I got thistles all over the place. And then there was one time, and then he calls me up and says, hey, what I need right now is I need white cedar, like the arborvitae. When the tips are growing, I need 3-inch long white cedar tips. Can you get that? Well, it hasn't quite flushed yet, but I'll go see, and we'll see how much we got available. And so then I went to a couple of these landscaper guys in town and said, hey, look, you got a couple of these maintenance contracts on these houses. I need these white cedar tips. So by starting with the mega market, the real market, solving the broker's problem. The broker had a problem. He doesn't have enough supply. I can't supply him with the big stuff. His little customers are nuisances for him. I solve his nuisance problem. He solves my lack of a market problem. Believe it or not, the capitalistic system, when done properly, can work. Can work. And so that one medicinal herb contact alone has been just incredible. And then as time goes on, now I know what his name brand is. I go to the store, I look for his products, and say, hey, dude, dude, where the heck are you getting your hazelnut oil from? Oh, you know, from Turkey. I said, well, what for? Okay, so that's where I'm selling all my hazelnut oil for $100 a gallon. That's not so bad, is it? So, but now I've got the big markets is the kilo of shift, and my produce. I'm selling tons of asparagus and tons of peppers, and I'm getting the next to lowest price per pound. But I know that I can count on it. I can count on it. You know, these milking cows for $350 a hundred, at least at Organic Valley, to hold prices for a period of time. You've got at least a year that you can balance your books, knowing that this is going to be money inbound. There's going to be the vagaries of weather and all that kind of stuff. You've got a baseline to build from, so I've got this baseline produce that I can count on. Then I do all this other stuff in my spare time, which I have plenty of, right? Now, if I had you in my zucchini patch pulling weeds, and I wake up in the morning and I say, oh my goodness, it's going to take Jim 73 hours today to get all these weeds pulled. I say, Jim, get up. Are you motivated to get up and pull my weeds from my crop where I make the profits? And then after your 8-hour day is over, are you really motivated to keep going until you can't see anymore and then turn on your headlamp and keep going until the job is actually done? You're a slave, or at best, you're a hired employee. You are not motivated to pad my pocket. However, you stand up in the morning, you look at the zucchini patch like, oh crap, if I don't get it done today, this is going to take over, I'm not going to get any income. You'll be up there with the headlamp before the sun is up and after the sun is down. It's a totally different approach.
Do you travel around to do these workshop shops, or are they always at your place? And you have an email or something you send out?
Here I am in Louisville, Kentucky. Do I travel around and do these workshops?
Well, this means see if I trip for a year. I mean, where can you find out where you're going to be?
Well, in theory, Peter, who's my cattleman right now, and I were going to set up my schedule for the year while we were here at the Acres Conference, sitting at the booth when nobody's there. This has been a little bit different experience for me this time at the Acres Conference.
You're selling your book.
Well, right. Well, I'm used to, like, you know, the swarm. People kind of, like, talk around and visit. This is, like, a bigger swarm these days, that's all.
Maybe it's something to do with the last Acres magazine.
Yeah, the last two.
Where you were interviewed in the one, I know, that probably really.
Well, then the article, the lead-off article, the previous one was a summary of my workshop. So, did I successfully avoid answering your question? Yeah.
Or like, again, you asked us, you know, 3 farmers, 1 question, you get 5 answers.
Right. Well, and that's like the first answer I ask anybody who's at my 2-day workshop. My first answer to the question is usually it depends. Because it does. It does. It applies. You know, the overall principles are the same, but it's different for your place, your place, your place. Your place is different for your financial situation. You know, the tax scheme, the legal scheme in your state, the zoning.
I don't know about everybody else, but I find health the most difficult thing. And my daughter met, included in her, she uses a lot of insurance. And it's constant turnover, and it takes a tremendous amount of it. It's not easy. And then how to pay them and how to do, you know, you don't have to deduct and all this stuff, but you have to do once a week there. It's easier just to eventually go on something.
Right. Well, and then that's part of the point of why we developed the whole technique that it is. We couldn't afford help, so we set up a system that it's basically, if it has to be, it's me. And what's neat about setting up this ecological system is there's something happening in the winter, there's something happening in the spring, there's something happening here. And how big is any one enterprise? Only as big as I can handle it. Because if it gets any bigger than that, asparagus, for example, I can pick, cut, wash, and pack, and deliver to the warehouse 2 acres of asparagus a day by myself in about 6.5, 7 hours. All right, I can't physically do any more than that. So and
you do it all by hand.
Every single day, all by hand.
And your back's not tired at the other 2 days.
Well, because now I have to do it a different thing. We're on the other side of the equation again. We're not doing something that's going to degrade our resource base and make us unhealthy. We are doing this as a martial art and a discipline, and it's improving us. So this is all as an exercise. And so when I'm picking asparagus, it's Tai Chi. I've got my bundle here, and I'm bundling here, and it's all this. And you're just perfecting form. You're doing an exercise. It's a discipline for an improvement. It's not like, oh my gosh, oh! No, there's 2 different things going on. Same function happens, but two totally different approaches. So I'd love to make more money off asparagus. Super easy crop, grows really well. If I were to get another 2 acres of asparagus, how many people would it take to harvest 2 acres of asparagus?
Just curious.
It would take another person. It would take another person to harvest that 2 acres of asparagus. And if I paid them for the time that it actually took to harvest the asparagus, I wouldn't make any money. So why would I want to hire anybody to harvest the asparagus? So all of my enterprises are as big as I can give them. And actually, think about the asparagus growing on the side of the road. Who planted that? Who does the mulch? Who does the weed control? Who does whatever? That is as effortlessly as I want to grow asparagus. And so, no, I don't salt my asparagus. How I deal with that is when we first planted it, we did a soil test, so we actually did something, and take a one bottom plow, cut a furrow, and then whatever the amendment would be to make a hyperactive, perfect asparagus patch, would take the mineral amendments and put it right in the bottom of the trench. And so instead of broadcasting over acres and acres and acres, tons and tons and tons, we put the equivalent of like 10 million tons of whatever the amendment is right in the trench. Put the asparagus crowns right on top of it. And then go with the back blade and just scrape it back over, put all the furrows across it. So my labor was drag a plow, pour in the amendments, bury it, done. Then as the asparagus starts to come up, you let it come up with the weeds. It grows just fine in among the weeds on the side of the road. Why can't it grow fine in among the weeds at my place? And then I leave it up all winter long, so it catches the snow, because sometimes that's the only water it gets is snow drift. And the next spring, as soon as the frost is out of the ground, and the ground is still firm, it hasn't gone to that mushy stage yet, and it's cold, I'll scalp mow the whole thing. So I just clip it right down to the ground, gets rid of the old stems, gets rid of all the weeds, and then I go out and pick. I'll pick and I'll pick and I'll pick and I'll pick until the asparagus disappears in the weeds. Now those, just over and over again, I hear, well, how do you keep up with those asparagus? It grows so tall. So if you allow an asparagus stem to get too long, that is your fault. It's not that it grew so fast. You didn't pick it. So you go out and you pick it every day. Every stem that's this long in my patch must be removed every day, or tomorrow it's too big. And so you pick it, you pick it, you pick it until all of a sudden the weeds are taller than the asparagus and you can't see it anymore. So I scalp mow it, and I'll set it back for between 2 and 4 days, and then it starts coming up again and start picking. And I'm grateful for the 2 to 4 day vacation. And then pick it till it disappears in the weeds. And the most I've ever had to mow in the course of the season is 3 times in the course of the season. Then, so it's happening like mid-May at my place until mid-June. We've got into July sometimes. When we mow those weeds the second time, they don't rebound as quick. And the asparagus still has a lot of energy stored in the roots, so it does rebound quicker than the weeds. And then by the time that last mowing takes place, the weeds don't rebound anywhere near as much, and the asparagus goes up above the weeds. So I have all these weeds down there giving me all the benefits of added organic matter, that sort of thing. And they don't, they compete, they're down here, and my asparagus is up here. Now, what are my weeds? At first, it was name it. Giant ragweed, burdock, thistles, and all that kind of stuff. But every 3 years or so, I broadcast like a white clover, not a sweet clover, the white clover, the New Zealand whites, just a low-growing clover. And over time, if I'm doing that every 3 years, over 17 years of doing that, the residual seed bank on my place is, clover. It's clover. And that's okay by me, because then I'm getting a nitrogen fixation from the clover.
You picking this big?
No, it ends up being, I think they're between 9 and 11 inches. That's the standard, but for me, this is what I also do when I'm helping other folks around. It's like, okay, peppers are coming on, and if you're going to be doing the peppers this year, I'll go through the pepper patch, and I get a pepper. It says, all that you're going to do today, no matter what you do, is you're holding this pepper in your hand. It's the perfect sized pepper that we're supposed to pick and ship. If I see you at all during the day without that pepper in your hand, it's going to hold the pepper. You're going to have to do it tomorrow, but you're going to do it today. You hold this pepper in your hand all day. So now, tomorrow you're going to start picking peppers. After today, you've done this all day long to get this pepper in your hand. All you have to do is when you walk into that pepper patch, you go ding, ding, there, one, ding, ding, ding. Your hands know what it feels like. You don't have to do this visual grading or anything. You just know. And so the same with the asparagus. I just go like this. It looks good. I've seen it enough. So I go down like this. My finger goes to the ground, and I can feel it right here. It's like, no, not long enough. and then you just kind of quickly go to the next one.
That really works for other people.
Yep. Yeah. Actually, with either Peter or Mo are here, they did the acorn squash this year. It's like, hey, guess what? Today's your squash day. Go on. We had the lowest rejection rate of any squash grower at Organic Valley this year. As a matter of fact, we were the only ones that had a perfect record. We didn't have a single case rejected.
Does he do that every year when he starts, or is it
Well, this is his first year doing it. He was a total greenhorn. But think about it. Now you're a total greenhorn. You've never commercially harvested acorn squash in your life. How do you know what good fruit is? Well, if I have you hold this thing all day, and you're trying to do your other work, but you've got to hold this thing in your hand, you've held it at every angle that you possibly could. You felt the stem, you felt the end. You know what this perfect squash feels like. At the end of the day, you've handled squash more than most farmers who've been in the business for, 100 years. And that's the point. Well, I never thought I would have got into asparagus and squash. It's pretty cool. Yes, Josh?
You spoke to a little bit about moth stocking yesterday.
Right.
So, Pastor, can you speak for a little bit to that today? I'm new at this and just wanted to see how that works for you.
Well, if you think about in the wild, grazing animals are prey. Somebody wants to eat them. So they naturally in the wild, like in the Serengeti and all that, the grazing animals will pack really close together in a shape that makes sure there's eyeballs on all sides. So there's this herd of animals, it's nothing but eyeballs on the outside. And then they move across the area rather quickly. They're not really leisurely about it, and they kind of mow through an area really quicker. And so what we do is we train the cattle on a smaller area, like a room this big. We have like 8 to 10 cattle in a room this big, while they're being trained to turn into a mob. Because these cattle these days aren't thinking that way. They're just cows doing whatever they're doing. We put them in there like for a week, and we have extra strands in the fence, extra ground rods, make sure it's well-watered ground rods, so they're going to get nailed if they touch that fence. Okay. And then you move them through that. It was within a week, because Peter did their livestock this summer. And within a week, these cattle all of a sudden are no longer individuals. They are a mob. And even when the fence, they would break out, because it got real dry, the fence wasn't really zapping all that well, they'd break out and you'd see them down the road and it's a clump. Then when they start grazing, they see the guy next to them. It's like, oh my goodness, he's going to get my grass. So they kind of graze it, and graze it, so they graze faster. And what that allows you to do is going through your system, the grass that you grazed, if you just put your cows out there on the pasture, they'll eat their favorite food. Yeah, and then it doesn't have an opportunity to grow back again because they come back to it and graze it. So the best browse for them, their preferred food, gets overgrazed and it becomes less. Whereas if you go through this whole area, they know that I've got to eat it because the guy next to me on either side is going to eat it. And this is all we got in this little paddock here. And they mow it. And if they don't eat, they trample the dickens out of it, coat it with manure, and urinate all over it.
And then your concentration is got to be much better.
Way higher. Everything that you've got, all the benefits are concentrated of these guys. And then you move to the next spot, and move to the next spot, move to the next spot. This now has an opportunity to grow back, much more fast. It has a higher concentration of everything, all the nutrients right on it. And this was the driest summer in Wisconsin history ever on record. And Peter did so well with the animals that we've never had pastures or cattle that looked so good.
How many were you in your herd?
He only had 8.
Were they dairy or beef?
Pardon?
Were they dairy or beef?
No. See, we're in dairy country, and see now. Remember my whole concept of sheer total utter neglect and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that we're stone broke and don't have any money. We're buying the animals that you can get for the lowest cost, and then they're gained. Pardon?
You're not milking. If you bought a dairy cow, it's not like you're milking here.
No, we're getting steers, and then because then what? If we get it for the cheapest possible price, and we give them no inputs whatsoever, so we have no costs. The grass is growing all summer anyways. We're getting them to work for us. Because now they're going between all these trees, right? They're accomplishing the weed control in my trees. They're accomplishing the fertilizers in my trees. And then the chickens and the pigs that are falling behind, this is all part of, and the turkeys, this is all part of the pest control. They're doing the work for me. And if I happen to be able to sell them for $1, that's great. Well, now if you've got grass-fed animals from New Forest Farm that have also been supplemented with hazelnuts and apples and all this kind of stuff. People pay more money for that. People pay more money for that. I mean, like the chestnut fed pork. Did any of you guys go and do a web search to see if you can find any chestnut fed pork? You can. I'm the only one who does it so far in this country. But if you go to hazelnut fat pork, you can find about a half a dozen people. The average price per pound this year was $14 a pound.
So you sell the cow to your steers in the fall, they'll go for winter?
Sometimes we have, but yeah, so we buy stockers in the spring and grow them through the summer. So we buy them at the lowest cost, feed them on a resource that's free, but what they're doing, the real reason why I've got them is they're my management tool. This is not my enterprise.
You're not finished. So,
oh yeah,
we're finished.
Yeah.
We're finished them in 5 months.
Yep.
1 pound we finished.
These ones were around, I think hanging weight was like 900 pounds.
Wow, those are big. What size farm?
Fall cattle, fall calves that they kept through the winter. We buy them in the spring. So
you're finishing them in 18 months.
Yeah, isn't that what you're supposed to do?
No, that's outstanding.
It's what?
That's amazing.
Oh,
without grain, you're not feeding them any supplemental corn or anything.
What they get when they're little is they get like their cup of grain because it's bait. They need to know. And the cattle this year, Peter was into, here cows, and they come running. And that's how they get their supplement. They got some free choice mineral that they can want. Because if it was going to be an expense, if I had to all of a sudden go to workshops and learn how to be, raise healthy cattle and all that kind of stuff, that's work and that's inputs, and I can't afford to do it. They have to be able to thrive with sheer total utter neglect, or else what happens? They die.
Did you have a lot of problems? So, like mob stocking in an open pasture is one thing, but silk patching with trees and everything in there, is that great?
Well, you will be fencing differently. We fence, depending on the system, because we have some systems like the hazelnuts, it's mostly shrubland with individual trees, bigger trees, and we have other areas that's like there's three-dimensional trees all in it. So we have different systems. Sometimes we're fencing in an alley, going down alleys. Other times we're going to go across several alleys at once, and it is what it is.
So if cattle's going to be, and beef's going to be one of your centerpiece items on your farm, then you're probably going to have to make allowance when you're laying out your design.
Right.
Like permaculture.
I would
hundreds of cattle good.
I would highly recommend setting them up as an alley crop system, because the first thing you do the water management strategy on the farm. So now we have our whole key line design. Your farm is now designed based on taking the water and spreading it evenly across the landscape. Then your access roads have to follow that pattern. Even if you want them to go some other way, that's not the point. We want to have optimized water. That gives us this optimized transportation. Then we put in our trees, and then we have the alleys. The width, if we're going to be doing grazing, I would probably recommend you also take your haying equipment out and make each alley a multiple of 2 number of passes for your haying equipment. So you're going at 2 passes with the trees on either side, or 4 passes with trees on either side, or 6 passes with trees on either side. Because when you're doing this system, because we've unified your whole property with this water management structure, you don't want to end up going out to the end of the field and finishing a pass and then driving home empty. You want to go up and back, up and back, up and back. Single pass all the way across the farm, and you're done at the end of the day. That way, now you've got these alleys where your cattle are grazing in these valleys, your trees are fenced off and protected.
So you have a permit in order to...
Yeah. Well, at least. Yeah, that's an issue right now because our fence, it's falling apart, it's old, so I'm getting sick and tired of scabbing together this piece and that piece, and it's time to invest in a real perimeter fence, and it's like, oh, yeah.